Hello, and welcome to the Live and Invest Overseas podcast. I'm Kat Kalashian, and today I'm joined by Con Murphy, who is the editor of our free weekly overseas property alert. Thanks for joining us, Con. He is our in-house property expert, and today he's here to tell us all about the do's and don'ts of navigating the Portuguese real estate buying market. So without further ado, take it away, Con.
Thanks very much, Kat. I'm delighted to be here. All right, the Portuguese property buying process. It's relatively simple or uncomplicated, but there are definite steps that everyone needs to go through when they're considering property in Portugal. First off, why would anyone want to buy property in Portugal? From an American point of view, the euro is weaker than it has been at any stage in the last 20 years. So anyone who's buying property in Europe and Portugal is getting about a 15 or 16% discount on what it would have cost them just a year ago. So that's really driving, that's one of the reasons that Americans and expats in general are looking closely at Portugal. To give you an example of how much attention Portugal is getting at the moment, as of 2022, for the first time ever, Americans are the largest non-European buyers in Portugal. They spent $25 million in real estate in the first quarter. And in the second quarter of 2022, 183,000 American tourists went to Portugal. And I know from a lot of people I know who are going there, and an awful lot of them went there with a view to viewing and touring properties in Portugal, with a view to buying for investment or to live there. So beyond that, if you're deciding or considering buying property in Portugal, there's the usual considerations you need to think about. Do you want to buy a house or a villa? Or do you want to buy a condo? Do you want to live by the beach, in a city, or in a rural area? There's pros and cons and advantages and incentives for these various options. And before we start, there's a couple of other things to bear in mind, that in Portugal, real estate agents, realtors vary in professional quality and professionalism. You need to ensure that any realtor you're dealing with is a member of the AMI, which is the Associação de Mediadores Imobiliários. And you can check whether or not your realtor is a member of, by checking the IMPIC website. You should also ask the realtor if they've dealt with a lot of foreign buyers before, and you want to be sure that their level of English is sufficient for you to understand what they're trying to tell you. It can be very frustrating if you can't understand the agent you're trying to work with. So beyond that, there are some other considerations you were thinking buying in Portugal. One is if you're looking for a mortgage or finance. As a foreigner, it's very advisable to get a mortgage advisor or mortgage broker to help you, because there are hoops to jump through that you mightn't be used to. Another factor is that you can only get a mortgage financing up until you're about 65 or at the very most 70 years old. And after that, the banks won't want to deal with you directly. So if you want a mortgage that's going to run beyond your 65th or 70th birthday, you're going to need someone to go guarantor for you or with you on the mortgage. This can have advantages if you get a family member, especially a son or daughter, to sign with you. It can have advantages with inheritance issues down the road. The next step is you should definitely get a lawyer to protect your interests. Technically, it's possible to handle the title transfer process on your own, but in a foreign country, in a foreign language, it's very inadvisable to try and handle it on your own. You need someone watching your back, and you need a proper and experienced real estate lawyer. Likewise, if you're coming from the States or Canada or from anywhere outside the Eurozone, you need to bear in mind that the exchange rate at the moment is very good, but you can get a better exchange rates by not using your current retail bank and using a money transfer service or a money exchange service. We recommend TransferWise. You could save with a property transaction, you could save thousands of euros and dollars on the transaction by getting a better rate when you're exchanging your money. Surveyors, you should always get a surveyor in if you're not buying a new property. You want to make sure that the property you're buying is structurally sound and there's no issues. Similarly, if you're buying off plan, you want to make sure that the developer is getting bank guarantees for each stage payment you make. So basically, if something goes wrong with the development, the bank guarantees that you will at least get your money back that you put into it. So you definitely want to do that if you're buying off plan. So the steps to the Portuguese property buying process are, they're not that complicated. Step one, and important for many things in Portugal, is you need to get an NIF number. That's your local tax registration number, or your number for operating in Portugal. You get that from the local town hall, which is called the Câmara. The next step after that will be to retain a good local lawyer experienced in property transactions. They're called an avogado. You then make an offer on a property that you like, that you believe is good value. You decide what the good value is by trusting your local realtor and by doing research on the local real estate websites to get a feeling for the areas and the prices in the areas that you're looking at. You make once you've made the offer, and if it's been accepted by the seller, you make a small reservation deposit just to hold it for a short period of time while you get the other matters in hand. 3,000 to 5,000 euros would hold it for the few days you need to get the other issues together. At this stage, you will definitely want, if you haven't done so already, get a surveyor to fully review the property for you. Stage two is you sign the promissory contract, which is called a contrato de promessa de compra e venda. You sign this contract in front of a local notary public. Your lawyer will conduct all the necessary due diligence. You need to make sure that the person you're buying the property from owns it and is entitled to sell it. There are no liens or mortgages on it. And very importantly, in this part of Europe, is that the property has been correctly registered with the Lands Department, that it has been zoned or it has planning permission as it's supposed to. This can cause huge problems down the line if someone is built on unzoned or unregistered land, as they refer to it there. At this stage, if everything looks correct, or your lawyer tells you everything is correct, you pay a deposit of between 10 and 30% of the purchase price, less the small holding deposit you paid in the first instance. At this stage, though, the deposit you're paying is non-refundable, which you will lose it if you back out at this stage. But importantly, if the seller decides to back out after you've paid this non-refundable deposit, they will owe you twice the deposit you paid. So once you've paid your proper reservation deposit, the seller is locked in, and they will be punished if they try and wriggle out of the deal or change the terms of the deal. It's something I like. Because in other jurisdictions, especially Ireland, you can find people gazumping each other and wriggling out of deals before the actual final contract is signed and the deed is transferred. At this stage, a transfer date is agreed between the lawyers, your lawyer and their lawyer. But this generally isn't rushed. You could be waiting up to 3 months for a transfer date to be set, and for you to go in and sign over the transfer paperwork. On the day of the transfer, your lawyer to the notary's office. You can give your lawyer power of attorney to go in on your behalf if you choose. A lot of people do that if they're not going to be in country when closing's happening. You give them power of attorney. In the closing, the notary will read the entire sales contract out in Portuguese, and possibly even in English. But that's really that's why you need your lawyer there, because once again, you want to make sure that the Portuguese version that is read out is actually what you believe to be happening. And after that, the transfer paperwork is signed. Once the paperwork is signed, you've got to pay the balance of the purchase price, including the transfer taxes that you're due. Do that by handing over a banker's draft in the meeting, or making the wire transfer from the meeting, and then the process is effectively over. The final step is your lawyer then takes that paperwork and he's got to register it with the local tax office and register it with the local land registry. This formalizes and seals the transfer process to you. So it's relatively simple and very relatively similar to anything you'd experience back home. The next step is the next matters to consider are the financial considerations of buying property in Portugal. And the main financial consideration is the tax system. Portugal has a medium to high rate of tax. I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea. It's not a bad thing. You get a lot of services for it. You get free education, subsidized transport, very inexpensive healthcare, and there's you get lots of benefits. In Portugal, if you do pay tax, no one likes paying tax. So there are ways for certain investors in Portugal to qualify for the NHR status, which is non-habitual residency status. This basically gives you a 10-year tax break on all income earned outside Portugal. and it reduces your maximum rate of income tax for Portuguese earned income from 48% to 20%. So it's a big reduction in taxes that you would have to pay if you are a tax resident in Portugal. Now, qualifying for NHR isn't exactly easy. There are certain qualifications you need to meet. You either need to be an EU citizen, or you need to get a golden visa. Golden visa is, you can get a golden visa in Portugal by investing 500,000 euros in commercial real estate, or between 500,000 euros in residential real estate in the interior, basically, of Portugal. They no longer allowed for beachfront properties. If you if you buy property that's designated in an urban regeneration area, that requirement level drops down to 350,000 euros. And if you were to buy property in what's designated as a rural area, the golden visa eligibility price would only be 280,000 euros. So it's a significant drop in what you need to invest. But this would be in interior rural property. Or the third way of getting NHR in Portugal is to have a high demand profession. This would be a consultant, an architect, an IT consultant, tax consultants, designers, people like that are in high demand can apply to the government, and they could be given NHR status. The final few criteria are you can't have been tax resident in Portugal in the previous 5 years, and you have to show proof of residence in Portugal in the form of property title or lease, which wouldn't be a problem if you've bought property already. So that's the NHR. To become tax resident in Portugal, if you could become tax resident in Portugal if you spend more than 183 days per year in Portugal, or you've your primary permanent residence in Portugal on the 31st of December in any year, or the head of your household, your spouse maybe, is tax resident in Portugal. So there's various ways of doing it, and it'd be advisable to get a bit of local tax advice if you're wondering about that. If you're a non-tax resident in Portugal, you pay a flat 25% tax on locally earned income. If you're married and both of you are resident, well, the tax rates vary from 14.5% up to 48% on a sliding scale, depending on how much you earn. If you're married, you can you're going to combine your incomes, and basically both you get an effective lower tax rate, or you can effectively use a lower tax bracket, which reduces your tax burden. There is a solidarity tax after the pandemic bust of 2.5% to 5% on earnings over 80,000 euros. There's no wealth tax in Portugal, but properties valued at over 600,000 euros incur a 0.7% tax on their assessed value annually, and this rate rises to 1% on the assessed value if the property value is over €1 million. There is a gift and inheritance tax in Portugal of about 10% as well. These issues are all things you'd be concerned about if you didn't have the NHR status in Portugal. The NHR status in Portugal does run out after 10 years, and after which you become, if you're a tax resident in Portugal, you become liable for taxes as a normal Portuguese citizen would. So before your NHR status runs out, you would really need to get proper local tax advice from a qualified tax advisor to figure out what's the best way to structure your affairs to pay the minimum legal amount of tax. The other things to be aware of is there's a property transfer tax called the IMT in Portugal. It doesn't apply to properties valued at less than 92,000 euros. It jumps from 2% to 5% after 126,000 euros in value. And the transfer tax, or something to be very aware of, is the transfer tax jumps to 10% for properties that are held in blacklisted offshore jurisdictions. These are jurisdictions that are flagged for money laundering, or in offshore structures that are low tax structures set up to avoid paying tax anywhere. You'll be penalized. So Portuguese property really isn't suitable for holding in complicated offshore structures. Portugal wants to see the person who owns it and to see that they're paying tax someplace on its value. So there's, separate to the property transfer tax, there is what's called, there is a local stamp duty, which is 0.8% property transfers, and it's 0.6% on any mortgages that are executed in Portugal. So if you're getting financing in Portugal, there'll be a small stamp duty on the mortgage that you get as you draw it down. Other things to be aware of is notary fees can be between 1% and 2% for the process. Your lawyer's fees could be 1.5% for the process. Capital gains tax, if you do sell your property down the line, is 28% if you're a non-tax resident. If you are a tax resident, it gets slightly more complicated in that you pay capital gains at your current income tax rate level, on half your capital gains. So you cut the capital gains in half and you add that to your general income and you pay tax at whatever tax bracket you owe in Portugal at the time. Aside from that, rental income is taxed at 28%, but you can deduct many expenses, including the finance cost, depreciation of furniture, and depreciation. Furniture, appliances, and decorations you can't deduct, but the rest of the expenses you can. And you can even claw back eligible expenses from up to 24 months before you rented out, expenses that you incurred in renovating the property to get it into a saleable state. So there we've had a blitzkrieg lightning run through the Portuguese property buying process. Did that blur into just a big jumble, Kat?
No, it sounds great. Thank you very much for taking us through it so quickly and efficiently. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Do any of our viewers have any questions about buying real estate in Portugal, about the markets? Have we forgotten anything? Do you have any experiences of your own to share? Please let us know in the comments section. And don't forget to subscribe. We post one of these new videos every Saturday. So thanks again, Con, for being with us today, and we'll speak with you again very soon.
Okay, thank you for having me, Kat. Great to be here.
Happy trails.